Welcome to the Emerging Driller series. I'm very excited today to introduce you to Benjamin Wolfe, who is selected as one of our emerging drillers. And unlike many of the discussions we've had so far, Ben is in Honduras. Ben, go ahead and introduce yourself, explain where you are in the world and how you got there.
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Ben Wolfe. I'm 25. I work with my dad here in a town called Siguatepeque, Honduras. So if you don't know where Honduras is, it's in Central America, just one country below Mexico. And yeah, we came down here as a family when I was about 13 years old. The idea was just to come down for 18 months and learn Spanish, and you know, 11 years later, we're still here. So, but yeah, that's just about how we got here.
So, was the plan when you came down to learn Spanish and water well drilling, or how did you get into?
No, no, that was not at all in the plans. The plans were just to learn Spanish. We had no experience with well drilling. So initially, my dad, he's a business guy, so we came down and he was a trucker in the States and he needed to find a way to be able to support us. So he started getting into water filtration and that was doing pretty well. And then my younger brother and I came to him. We're like, "Hey, Dad, like we'd like to stay here, but there's no opportunities. There's no jobs. You can't just go out and work at a Walmart or Burger King down here, at least as a foreigner." So he said, "Okay, well, let's try well drilling." So with no prior experience, that's how we got into it. We started out with a small machine that someone had actually built by hand. And for the first well we did, we actually had to pull it in with a pair of oxen through a river, and we that took us like a 200-foot well. It took us probably a month to drill. Small mud rotary rig. From there, we decided we needed a little bit bigger of a rig, so we got a cable tool rig, a Bucyrus Series 2022W, and we drilled with that for many years, and then ended up getting a mud air rotary rig down the road. So that's how we got it. But we had no prior experience with drilling beforehand.
That's wild. So, years later, what do you love about your job?
That's a good question. So the actual day-to-day job, I I mean, I'm sure just about everybody gives this answer, but it is true that you're on a different site just about every single day. Every single well is different, as you know. So you're not just it's not you don't get into routine, you don't get into the daily grind or whatever. It's every single day is changing. And I like that. I like the challenge. I like being able to, you basically have to continue to learn because if you don't, well, you're kind of screwed. So I like that. And I love that it's got a little bit of everything. You got the trucks, you got the equipment. We also do the installations and all that. So you got a little more technical side, which is just it's fun to do a little bit of everything. And then on the top of that is the fabrication work that you sometimes have to get into, learning how to weld, all that kind of stuff that you kind of have to do as a weld driller when you're an owner operator, I guess you could say. Um, and I also just love the feeling of being able to actually see the improvements. So you just make this slight change, even minutely, and you see it on the next job, it being easier, faster, whatever. I like that. And then specifically about our work down here, we are lucky enough to be able to about 10% of our profit as a private business, we do donated wells. So a lot of that goes into communities. These communities, they don't have any water this at all. These kids, I mean, they'll be walking 3 miles every single day with jugs just to get water out of a creek Or I mean, one place we were working at, they had actually just dug a pit for to collect rainwater, and they washed clothes, they bathed, they drank out of that same pit. And then we were able to drill them a well, and now they've got clean water. And I mean, that right there is has to be a highlight, because that just the feeling you get from being able to do something like that and seeing the look on their faces of just how excited they are, that's indescribable. And I think a lot of people forget, because it is just your day-to-day job, that water is essential. And a lot of people, when you live without it, it makes a huge difference in a community. So just being able to do that, that's a great part of the job for sure.
So we've asked this question to many young drillers and multiple different answers around the states here, but
Hmm.
you're in a challenging area. What would you like to improve within the industry, within your bubble or the industry as a whole? What do you see?
I think, to me, and with my personal experience, I think the biggest thing to me is actually pretty much what you're doing and the driller is doing, just information, just sharing information. Because when you're learning when you're not underneath somebody, or at in a well drilling business, and you come up through that business and you're not taught all these things, the learning curve on this job is incredibly steep, because of the same thing. I mean, you have no idea what you're going to run into on a well. It varies so much. So just having that information out there written down, is would be, I think, I mean, you guys have been a huge benefit, but more of that. I mean, I think about, like, when we're doing pump installs or pump systems, most of that information is out there. You can take a course, just about any on that out there. But as far as like a course for water well drilling, I haven't found it. And maybe it is out there. It could be, but I would just love to see just more of that information shared, because every single well driller that I've talked to, they're just so incredibly open to sharing, to helping you out and everything. It's just, unless you have access to those kind of drillers and ask them these questions, the information is hard to come by. That's the biggest thing I see.
That's excellent. And I appreciate you giving a shout out to the driller. And obviously, we have, the National Groundwater Organization that is doing great things for teaching. And we have, the International Ground Source Heat Pump Association and the American Water Works Association. So we do have some knowledge brokers out there, but you're
Yeah.
right. We don't focus enough on the next generation and what technology we need to learn from. So that's some great insight. With that, what do you want to learn next, man?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I don't feel like I'm all there with well drilling, water well drilling. I mean, it's just a constant learning process. But what I would like to get into down here is geothermal. I think it would be there. It's not done down here. I don't really know a whole lot about it. I find it very interesting, and I would love to be able to bring it down here, just because, I mean, as far as heating, cooling, geothermal systems, obviously we're not going to be dealing with heating down here, but the cooling system specifically, I mean, you're looking at places where it's constantly, like day to day, like over 110 degrees, extreme humidity, and they just have heat pumps sitting outside. And I don't know, I just feel like geothermal could do a lot down here. And again, I don't know much about it, but I'd like to learn about that. Yeah.
I think we can get you connected with some folks that are some gurus out there. That would be a
Sounds
great
great.
thing. We'll help you there. How about
Thanks.
shifting into your business again? Talk about something that's challenging when it comes to a project or something you've had to overcome. I can't imagine working where you are versus, the stakes are not as high for us here in the States when, we're one cell phone call and a large truck full of stuff showing up at our yard.
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the biggest things for us specifically is just we tend to work in a lot of areas that are very remote. So any sort of issue you have, um, you might be 5 hours away from our yard, where we can grab something. So we really have to really be super prepared about taking everything, absolutely everything for anything that might happen. And that includes, like if we have any sort of breakdown on the rig or anything, we have to go with all our tools. I mean, everything to just about be able to pull that part or that rig apart at any point. Um, and yeah, I would say that, and also just being able to get into some of these areas. I mean, we've had to buy like an older 6x6 military truck just to be able to get into some areas, which, again, that's why I love the job as well. There's not many jobs you have uh, a good reason to buy a 6x6 truck,
I,
but
I'm sure the bison get a little jealous if you brought in a 6x6, right?
oh yeah, yeah, they did. But yeah, it's a little easier.
Okay. How about what's one big lesson you've learned so far? Give us some insight to other drillers your age.
Um, Personally, um, I think it's just about learning to love the challenge because initially, when I first started, again, I mean, those first couple of years were incredibly difficult, not knowing anything. My initial reaction to just about every problem is just to throw my hard hat onto the ground, right? And just like walk off the well and just, I'm done, I'm done. But after a while, I mean, you have to learn to love that challenge. You have to learn to just when something comes up that maybe you haven't seen before, or is just, something's not going right. I now I start to feel like um a little bit excited about it, just being able seeing like, okay, well, if I can figure this out, it's one more thing in my mental toolbox to pull out next time this comes up or whatever. So when a well doesn't go exactly how I plan and I see something that doesn't go right, it's I start to enjoy it. I mean, obviously I'm not like that all the time. There's sometimes when I don't want to be a well driller, but I mean, I seriously, I think that's it. Is just learning to love the challenge.
So with learning to love the challenge, how the heck do we recruit more people under the age of 30 that want to drill? You got any guidance or thoughts on this?
I've got thoughts. I certainly don't have the answer, but I have thoughts. I would say, again, coming all I can talk to is my personal experience and seeing how other people my age have also been through these things. But I think the biggest thing is when I was graduating from high school when I was 18, so now 7 years ago, there is a huge pressure um, to just go to college, like go to university. That's the next step. Like you get out of high school and you go to university. And obviously, I have nothing against getting a degree, higher education. I'm all for it. But I think that I don't know, the schools, high schools, starting at a high school level, we need to show that there's other viable options out there. College is not the right choice for everyone, and trades are not the right choice for everyone. But for a lot of people, trades are a great option and they're a very viable option. And I think I do feel like in the last couple of years, that's maybe the stigmatism towards blue collar work, so to say, is going down. And I like seeing that. But I think it's still there. And I think we need to just continue to push that there's other viable options out there and very good options. Um, and the other thing is specifically to well drilling is and water systems, all that kind of stuff, is before getting into it, I didn't even know it was an option at all. I mean, I've never heard of it. So I've heard, obviously the normal things that people hear of is electricians, plumbers, construction, all this kind of stuff, welders. But well drilling, you don't think about that as a trade normally. It's a little more niche. So I guess with that, we just need to guys need to work on your marketing. We need to work on our marketing, get on TikTok or something. But yeah, so
That's great. My final question, and obviously again remote, and with the cell phones and the internet, obviously we can connect with folks almost at any time instantaneously.
Right.
Is there any mentors or advocates in this industry that you'd like to give a thank you to, or a shout out, or a nod to?
Oh yeah. Well, first of all, my dad, just because I mean he's the reason I'm in this position. When we bought the rotary rig like after realizing that the cable tool was just not going to be able to do everything we wanted to, he bought the rotary rig, and he basically said, "Hey, I don't want to be a well driller, so you either learn or we're done." And I had to learn, and one way or another. So first of all, him, I mean, he's just been a huge support and everything. I mean, we're teammates in this, you know. And second of all, the guy that we bought our rig from, actually, he's up in northern Minnesota, Kevin Fiddledye, and he has just been an incredible drilling mentor. Just every time I need something, especially knowing the rig, right? So any sort of mechanical problem, any sort of well drilling problem, you pick up the phone, and he's right there. And I will say he did try to keep me out of the industry. Every time I have a problem, he'll say, "So you wanted to be a well driller?" And so he was like, you don't want to be a well driller. It's complicated, it's hard work, but he's a great guy. And also just a couple other guys there in Michigan, Todd Heeman and Kevin Buwaldi. They just two other guys that have just been incredibly helpful. Yeah.
That's excellent. I love the fact you're giving shout outs to Minnesota and Michigan. I grew up drilling in Michigan. And
Okay.
ironically enough, when we got our first rotary for Yordi and some well drilling, my father, same thing. Nope, nope. I'll take the 43 Cyclone out and keep hammering casing. You're gonna do all this newfangled drilling. And I'm like, Dad, rotary's been around for 40 years at this point.
Right. Yeah.
Well, excellent. I really appreciate your time. And I know it's not easy to just find a stable internet connection and, hop on here, but kudos to you, man. It's one thing for us to punch water wells in the States, but I think what reinvigorated me when I was working for Bayreuth, and I've gotten to do some other humanitarian work, is you punch a well in and developing countries, or Honduras is an established country that's got good infrastructure in places, but still that moment that you get that water and everybody around gives you that, like, I get goosebumps thinking about it right now, seeing people cry, start dancing, they start cooking, it is a celebration. And then
It
you
is.
come back to the States and they're like, "Oh, you're done with this well, I guess I gotta pay you now." And it's like,
Yeah.
dude, so thank you for doing what you're doing, man.
Hey, my pleasure. I love it.